Imagine you reach into your pocket and realize you've lost a $20 bill. Gone, maybe fallen out at the coffee shop. Now imagine finding that same 20 tucked in an old jacket you forgot about. Both events involve identical money, yet the loss feels far more powerful than the gain feels good. Your brain isn't treating those two 20s the same way, and that quiet asymmetry shapes nearly every financial decision you'll ever make. This isn't a personal flaw or a sign you're uniquely bad with money. The same pattern shows up across cultures, income levels, and age groups. Behavioral scientists have studied this asymmetry for decades, and it appears in how people invest, how they shop, how they negotiate salaries, and even whether they ever bother canceling a subscription they stopped using months ago. Once you recognize it, you'll start seeing it absolutely everywhere. The phenomenon has a name: loss aversion. It describes the tendency for the pain of losing something to feel significantly more intense than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. It sits at the heart of prospect theory, one of the most influential frameworks ever developed for understanding how real people actually make decisions, as opposed to how classical economists long assumed they would. The pain of losing is not just present, it dominates. To understand why this exists, think about your ancient ancestors. For most of human history, a loss could be truly catastrophic. Losing food, shelter, or the protection of your group could easily mean death, while missing out on a somewhat better foraging spot was rarely fatal. Brains that treated threats as extra serious survived and reproduced more reliably, and that built-in threat sensitivity got hardwired across generations. You inherited it, and it is running right now. Loss aversion hits especially hard in investing. When a stock you own drops in value, the emotional response is often intense enough that people hold on to it far too long, waiting to get back to even before selling, even when selling and reinvesting elsewhere would clearly be the smarter financial move. The pain of locking in a confirmed loss feels so much worse than the theoretical benefit of a better opportunity that rational action simply gets paralyzed. There is a closely related phenomenon called the endowment effect. Once you own something, you tend to value it more highly than you would if you did not own it. Experiments have shown that people demand significantly more money to sell an object than they would be willing to pay to buy that exact same object. The simple act of ownership triggers attachment, because letting go of something you already have feels like a loss, and losses hit hard. This is also what drives the sunk cost fallacy. You have already spent money, time, or effort on something that is clearly not working, a bad investment, a failing project, a gym membership you have not used in months. Logically, past spending is gone and should not influence future decisions. But because stopping feels like accepting a loss, you keep pouring resources in. Loss aversion turns the past into a trap that keeps pulling you backward. Marketers understand loss aversion deeply, and they use it constantly. Limited time offer. Only 3 left in stock. Don't miss out. Every one of these phrases is specifically designed to trigger your fear of loss rather than your desire for gain. Research consistently finds that framing a choice as a potential loss tends to be more motivating than framing that exact same choice as an equivalent potential gain. Fear of losing sells more reliably than the hope of winning. The way a choice is framed can change your decision entirely, even when the underlying numbers are completely identical. Hearing that a plan has a 70% chance of success feels different from hearing it has a 30% chance of failure, even though those two statements describe the same reality. This framing effect is one of loss aversion's most powerful expressions, and politicians, advertisers, and negotiators all use it, whether consciously or not. Salary negotiation is a place where loss aversion quietly costs many people thousands of dollars across their careers. The prospect of a negotiation going badly, seeming greedy, creating awkwardness, or risking the offer looms far larger than the upside of higher pay. That emotional asymmetry is loss aversion in action. The cruel irony is that asking respectfully almost never carries real consequences, but the fear of possible loss keeps many people permanently silent. Loss aversion also explains why people stay with bad defaults for years on end. Switching bank accounts, insurance plans, or energy providers means giving up what you currently have, and that feels like a loss, even when the alternative is objectively better and cheaper. This status quo bias means inertia is not just laziness. It is your brain actively shielding you from the emotional cost of loss. Millions of people overpay for years simply because switching feels like losing something. Here is the surprising twist. Not all loss aversion is bad. In certain contexts, it is genuinely protective, stopping you from gambling away your savings, taking reckless financial risks, or being talked into a sketchy get-rich-quick scheme by someone persuasive. The same mechanism that occasionally makes you irrational is also a real brake on dangerous impulsivity. The goal is not to eliminate loss aversion. It is to understand when it is working for you and when it is quietly working against you. The real danger comes when loss aversion hijacks decisions that require clear thinking. It makes you hold bad investments too long, avoid career risks that could genuinely transform your life, and say yes to unnecessary add-ons that feel like protection but are actually just fear dressed up as prudence. It keeps you anchored to comfort zones that are actively costing you. When the fear of losing is louder than the logic, you are not choosing freely. You are being pushed. The reframe that helps most is simply naming what is happening in the moment. When you feel an unusually strong pull away from something, pause and ask, am I genuinely evaluating this option, or am I reacting to the fear of loss? That brief pause, labeling the emotion as loss aversion rather than treating it as pure logic, creates just enough mental space to make a decision based on what you actually want, not on what you are afraid of losing. It also helps to zoom out and think in longer time frames. Loss aversion tends to scream loudest in the immediate moment, the sting of a falling stock price today, the discomfort of switching providers right now. But when you ask yourself how you will feel about this choice in 5 years, the emotional signal gets quieter and the rational case becomes far easier to hear. Deliberately creating distance from the moment genuinely changes how the math looks to you. So here is what you now know. Your brain was designed to feel losses more sharply than gains. And that ancient design runs silently beneath nearly every money decision you make. Awareness does not make you immune. The emotional pull will still show up. But knowing it exists, understanding where it came from, and learning to pause and name it in the moment means you already have something most people do not. A small but very real edge over your own psychology.